Hey guys, welcome to Vlad's AP World History class. This is a new show on YouTube I decided to try out. Um, Not exactly a show, just one video, but we're gonna call it a show for now. We're gonna see what happens. Today we're gonna be talking about manorialism or the feudal system. This is the relationship between their lords, and their serfs on their estates. This was back in medieval times, and these estates were called manors, hence the name manorialism. Manorialism started after the Western Roman Empire fell. And after that fell, there was nobody governing anything else, so everything collapsed and exploded and everyone died. Anyway, it all broke off into little tiny states. So no one was really governed by anyone. It was just free for all, do what you want. So lords decided, heck, why not do this? There were peasants, poor people, and there were rich people, the nobles, the lords, and they said, well, let me hire them to come work on my estate. So they hired them to work on their estate in return for protection and a little bit of money, not much. Peasants were tied to their lord. They couldn't do anything outside the estate. They couldn't marry outside the estate unless the lord gave the permission, which he rarely did because the lords were pretty mean. Uh, they had to pay extra for any luxuries, so they had their little basic cottage, little house, is one room for the whole family of like five or six. It stank. It was bad. They just tilled the fields all day and grew crops, and that's basically all the people did. And the Lord got all the benefits, and it seemed like the peasants didn't really get much, which is true, but it was better than them having to live out on their own, not having food, water. At least they were provided for here. But it still really sucked. So life sucked for the peasants, period. Now you may be thinking, well, gosh, Vlad, peasantry sure does sound like slavery back in the 1800s. But it's not exactly slavery because a slave had no wages, had no freedom, and he was bound to serve his master for life. He was owned by his master. Peasants were still considered people. They were just supposed to stay on that manor. Now, let's talk about the social structure of the medieval feudal manorial system. First off, we're going to talk about the lords, which were the rulers of the estate. The lord of the manor's job was to run the manor house and run all the farms. He would listen to and take the peasants' complaints whenever they complained, and he would try to provide for the peasants best they could, which they didn't really do. They kind of in it for themselves. They had to report to their king above them and be able to raise an army of knights and peasants if necessary for a war. Here's a fun one to talk about. Knights. Knights lived on the Lord's land and had much more freedom than serfs or peasants. They were trusted by the Lord. They worked their way up. Most knights were born to wealthy families. Peasants couldn't become knights. Serfs couldn't become knights because all that equipment and gear was very expensive, and you need money to pay for expensive stuff, am I right? They were knighted at 21 years old after all the training they did in their childhood. They would pray all night the night before because they were extremely religious, and a lot of the things in knighthood were based on religion. The next day, they would be dubbed on one shoulder by a sword that would complete their knighthood training. They had a chivalry, and what that means is they had all these certain rules that they had to follow. They would always have to defend a lady, speak the truth, be loyal to the Lord, be devoted to the church. He would and they'd be charitable and defend the poor and helpless. They would be brave. Knights were skilled on horseback and with a sword. They were the main fighters in most wars, including the Crusades. On normal days, knights would just defend the manor and carry out tournaments for training, which is where jousting originated. But that's a story for a different day. And finally, last but not least, we have the peasants, which were the basis of the manorial economy. You might not think these guys are important because they're all poor and lonely and sad. Well, they weren't lonely. There were so many of them. They were the majority of the people in medieval times. But the point is that they were the ones that did all the farming. They were the ones that provided for the lords so that the lords would be able to pay their knights that worked for them. Also, they were used as regular soldiers in certain wars and campaigns along with the knights, but the knights were their commanders, obviously. And like I said before, they're not slaves, but they have to stay in their lord's land, and they are paid. They are treated like human beings most of the time. I mean, they were whipped and stuff, but it wasn't that bad like slavery was. They weren't thought of as objects. They were still thought of as people. They were given a place to live and enjoy their life somewhat. Well, that's the manorial system in a nutshell. I want to thank you guys for watching. I want you to rate, comment, and subscribe, please. Leave constructive criticism in the comments below. I might need that if I decide to make more of these. Thanks for watching.